Hello, I'm Somi. I'm the founder of the think tank for women in business and technology and the FemPeak platform, with the mission of raising women's socioeconomic status. I've always been fascinated by how much of our faith is decided at birth. Certainly, it seems that the answer is a lot of it when it comes to gender and sex. Or does it? That is a point which I had the super interesting debate about with our guest on today's podcast. Professor Alessandra Cassar directs the master's program in international and development economics at the University of San Francisco. She uses both field and laboratory experiments to study individuals' behavior, and she's especially interested in exploring women's competitiveness in the socioeconomic realm. Before we dive into the conversation, I want to ask you to please keep an open mind, as I sometimes say things that may sound really out there. But remember that I'm an explorer. I don't have all the answers, but I feel it's important to ask the what-if questions. Please take whatever I say with a grain of salt. To me, it's less important to be right than to have a constructive conversation, and I hope you share that sentiment. The number one thing that we are really looking at with this conference and with the think tank sessions is to understand why women are not in the top 1%. They're not as many. Definitely, they're not in the top tier as much as they should be. So part of it is, as like people say, maybe women are less competitive, which I see that one of the things that you are mentioning in your research is that that's actually not true. Can you explain what experimental economics is and what's the work that you do? And then we will go to this whole concept of female-male competitiveness.
Yes. Well, let's start from the very beginning. Economists really, many social scientists worry, and also not people in social science, but the social scientists are the ones that study society, and the economists are really the ones that take notice that, at least some of the economists take notice that women are not equally represented as much as men. Mm-hmm. And the hypothesis for a very long time, up until 20 years ago, we looked at discrimination. Yes, there is some discrimination. And how do we know that there is discrimination? Because we do all sorts of study, especially field experiment, where we send phony CVs to prospective employers. And there is only one thing changing, the name of a female versus the name of a male. And we see how many get a call back for the exact same CV. So we use the experimental method to conduct studies that are really bulletproof. Economics was not an experimental science until the 60s, the 50s started, the 60s, but then it became really experimental starting in the 80s and the 90s. And the power of the scientific method is really what convinces people that we are really addressing, we are really learning about what causes what. And this kind of field experiment, I think everyone can see the appeal and can believe the result, because economists do a lot of stuff analyzing data. And some people, unless they know econometrics, they think, how did you got this result? There are so many assumptions, so many things. But when you go to the laboratory or to the field and you show what people really do when put into this condition, it's kind of, it's very convincing. Mm-hmm. It's externally relevant, it's very convincing. So experimental economics is a methodology to test theories about human behavior. We do it in the laboratory, often with university students, but we also do it in cities, in developing countries, among interesting population. I've run experiment among the fabled women trader in West Africa, among, I don't know, any culture and and socioeconomic group that you think is relevant. So economists started really by doing experiment and really showing that there is discrimination, because it's hard to convince people unless you show them with something that they would believe. Because at the beginning, people didn't even believe that gender discrimination was existing. So there is some discrimination, but it doesn't account for, even when you account for the discrimination, you cannot explain away completely the gap in lack of representation at the top.
So what
And
is the next thing then?
the next thing was, well, could it be that men are more educated and have more experience than women? And so education wise, it was like that probably 60 years ago, but now it's it's a couple of decades at least that we have women graduating from colleges at even higher rates than men, women getting really good grades. So is even this hypothesis that may have been relevant a few years ago, it is not really, it cannot account for this gap. What about experience? The fact that when women have babies, they leave the job market for a little bit. In the United States, where there is no universal parental leave, can be as short as 4 weeks. I know in Europe is more generous. I know that in Italy can be up to 3 years. So economists thought, well, those are 3 critical years, a gap, a hole in the CV that cannot be matched up, and this could account for the gap. Well, even when you take this into consideration, there is still a chunk of this gap that cannot be explained. So about 20 years ago, behavioral economists, experimental economists came up with a behavioral explanation. Well, if it is not just about discrimination, education, experiences, could it be that women just don't want it? Could it be that they have a lower desire to compete, that they have a lower interest to enter into competitive situation in which there is a big winner like the CEO, the president of a country, the mayor of a city, but there is only one winner. All the rest get nothing. So it's a high risk situation. Could it be that women are more inclined to have more predictable but stable return? Instead of being entrepreneur, they might prefer to be employees, so they have a regular paycheck every single month. Maybe women, for whatever reason, that may also have to do with our role of provider of children, prefer some sort of stability and continuity to those big gains that happen, but they are very risky because only one. We call them winner take all kind of tournament. And from then, lots of experiments have been conducted, mostly in developed countries, in the US in premise, but also in Europe. And now they're starting to be conducted really across the world in many developing countries. And it's interesting that it is mostly for developed countries and gender egalitarian countries that we see through experiment a gender gap in behavior. Do you want to know what's the classic experiment that measure competitivity? So it's a very simple game. And this is the power of experimental economics at its best, when it is a simple game that convinces people that this is a fair test. And this is where my work comes into place, where I say, but is it really a fair test? So this is the game. Imagine you are one of my subject participants, and I'll make you do a task. It could be addition. You have to add up in your mind or with paper and pencil 5 two-digit number. Or it could be a different task. You have to match in those matrices the word, and you have to find apple, pear, book. So we take a task, and the experiment unfolds in 3 rounds. Round number 1, I'm telling you, I'm paying you $1 per correct addition. And you can make, I give you 2 minutes, do the best you can in 2 minutes, and you get paid $1. Is it clear so far?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This one is a non-competitive environment. We call this one the piece rate incentive scheme, where you get paid always that amount. You get paid more if you do more, but there is no uncertainty. There is no competition. You get paid for how many addition you make. And then there is round 2, where instead I pair you up with someone else. And now it's the competition. Only one of you is gonna get paid. The one that makes more correct addition, the one that solves more problem. One gets paid twice as much as before, $2 per correct answer, but the other one gets paid 0. So we have a non-competitive environment, then we have a competitive environment. And the real experiment starts in round 3, where we ask people, so for the next round, how do you want to be paid? Do you prefer to be paid a fixed amount per correct answer, or do you want to be paid twice as much, but only if you are the winner? So you can be the winner, but you can also be the loser. And this is the real experiment. And this experiment, so is not really how many summation you do, is what you choose, the environment that you choose. Starting 20 years ago, it shows that 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it was a different kind of experiment. They showed that women select into the piece rate tournament, the one that pay a constant amount, but without the competition, while men prefer the competitive environment at twice as much the rate as the women. So the behavioral economy said, that's it. This is what may account for this gap. It's choice. If women don't want to enter into this environment, they don't want to face the riskiness of the competition, we cannot force them. If they don't want to go into STEM discipline, we cannot force them.
But
And
is
this
that
was
true?
the status, and this was the start, and this is what still for most economists, this is what has been going on.
Just based on
And
that kind of test? I mean, surely that can't be.
This test has been replicated hundreds of times.
Okay.
And based on the test, sometimes it doesn't replicate. But based on this test, also based on survey, you do survey and you ask women and men, do you think competition brings out the best or the worst in people? Women, significantly more than men, think that competition brings out the worst in people. You ask questions like, do you think it's important to be the top or not? You have this behavioral difference with respect to competition. And so this was the state of the knowledge, although there were a few experiments that show that, for example, in so matrilocality doesn't exist. Matriarchal, there is no such a thing as a matriarchal society. There are patriarchal society, but matriarchal, where women have all the power and men are subjugated and relegated to a secondary position, there aren't. We simply don't have evidence.
Really? Not at all? Nowhere in the world?
Matriarchality doesn't exist. What exists is matrilocality. So matrilocal and matrilinear. Matrilinear is when property gets passed down from the mother to the daughter. And matrilocality is whether the new couple goes and live with the family of the woman versus the man. But patriarchy means something else. Patriarchy is the system, is any system in which women have more power than the women, and the women are in a secondary position. We
You
never
mean
have
men
the
have? You meant
men.
men
Yes.
have, yeah.
No, I'm not aware of any matriarchal society. There are some society in which women, there is some ethnic group in China. There are, for example, the Nana bands of Togo, the women Western trader. They are the one that used to have all of the economic resources. But it's not that they subjugate men. When women have power, they don't subjugate men. They don't prevent them to go to school. They don't prevent them to run for political election. If anything, in this society, men have a sweet deal because they can still hold a really good position in society, and women do lots of the work and run the show.
Mm-hmm.
So, first of all, there is no symmetry between the sexes.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that the women are in power, they are going to behave like when men are in power. It's a completely different game. By reading, not just economics. So, this was the state of knowledge. That, and there is still, I would say, the vast majority of economists think that women are less competitive than men. And we have experiments. So these facts are really solid. I'm not arguing against the fact. What I'm arguing is that is it really a fair test?
Mm.
Is it really a fair test? So first of all, being a CEO or being a mayor is not just about money. It's really a question of having power. And how is it possible that men would benefit from power more than women? We know that women that have powerful position, they do better in life. Their children do better in life. They are less bullied, less harassed. This led me, just this I was just uncomfortable. There was something inside of me that says, but all the lecture in biology that I got growing up about how fierce the mama bear is, about the bonobos that cooperate with each other to counterbalance male power, about even by having cats and seeing how fierce a mother cat is, I started to expand my reading outside of economics, and I started to read books in evolutionary psychology. And I stumbled upon the work of Sarah Hardy. And then I felt like I had swallowed fireworks. I understood something so profound and so powerful. And since that day, all of my experiments are informed by this idea that every creature is optimized to do best depending about the hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, and it what worked best for that particular creature. And among humans, we have two sexes. We have male and we have female. It's not the majority of you in social science to believe that biological differences are that important. Nobody denies that there are differences in violence due to testosterone and various other hormones, and there are differences due to estrogen in women. But for most of the economists, the behavioral difference are due to culture, are due to upbringing, are due to the way children are socialized. And again, there is lots of evidence for that. But the evolutionary psychologists go one step deeper and say, oh, at the basis of that, of course, there is culture. But the same way our body evolved, we don't have a tail anymore. Our teeth are different because we have a different diet. The way our vision evolved, even while we have the white around the eyes, is through evolution, right? Natural and sexual selection. Evolutionary psychologists think, well, why not the mind? Only the body evolved and not the mind. And in the idea of the mind that evolves, they started to uproot, is very controversial still, not among them, but among other people that are not evolutionary psychologists. There is this idea that we evolved adaptation. What are the adaptation? Adaptation are those automatic behavior. They are optimization mechanism where we don't even need to think about why we do a certain action. We just do it. Take, for example, sex. Why people want to have sex? They don't even think about that it is so to pass your genome, to make sure that your genome continue to the next generation. The genes press around. People don't need to be conscious. But what's important that nobody denies that that is not a powerful driver of male behavior in certain way and female behaviors in other way. So, looking at evolutionary psychology, well, reading Sarah Hardy, there is her first book was The Woman That Never Evolved. So, if there is a creature, the female human, that is not competitive, does it mean that she didn't pass through thousands of years of evolution?
Mm-hmm.
Does it mean that for her having resources is not important? Does it mean that there is one thing, the law of nature that work for men, but not for female? Everything started also for them, this paradigm of the passive woman, of the non-competitive woman, started actually in biology with the experiment of Bateman. Do you ever leave in your kitchen fruit to rot?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I
What
don't
would
leave it to rot, but
no.
sometimes it rots. Yes.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes, so next time it rots, you will see that within a few days there are the fruit flies.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look carefully at those fruit flies, they are very naughty fruit flies. They have lots of sex, they reproduce a lot, and they are the perfect experimental lab animal because you can test generation after generation really fast because they procreate really, really fast. And Bateman, with the fruit flies, after a careful experiment, noticed that male that were more promiscuous, they had more female partner, they pass out more genes, while it was not so for the female fruit flies. From then, the idea that, haha, for males, being competitive, being risk taker, it's really advantageous because they spread around, they pass around way more genes. So those males that are not that are less successful than the super spreader of genes, they are going to have their genes and their behavior eventually dwindle out from the population. So for male, take men like Julius Caesar or Genghis Khan or the Chinese emperor. Julius Caesar had the law in Rome change, so he could marry, I think, over 100 wives, and he had over 200 children. So lots of Italians nowadays might still have some of the genome of Julius Caesar. Chinese emperor had harems of thousands of wives. Everything for procreation, of course. What about women? For women, they said there is a limit. Somi, can you have 1,000 children? No, we cannot have 1,000 children, at most 200. So from this fact of nature, that women have eggs instead of the more plentiful semen, that we need to invest more in every single offspring because there is gestation and lactation. We have a limited number of the maximum number of children is that one. So it doesn't make sense for women to have evolved this risk-taking, more promiscuous behavior because it's not adaptive. And what Sarah Hardy says is that it's not just, but who said that needs to be a question of quantity? The game of life for women has always been a question of quality, attracting the best possible mate. And this is not a simple task. The best possible mate has all of the genetic marker of being, you know, a good male, but also to have markers of being an investor in the baby, an investor in the family. So she argues that the competition might be different for the two sexes. And the game that the women have to play is very different than the game that the men have to play. But that doesn't mean that the competition should be any less, because the main goal for everyone, even if it is unconscious, is making sure that the offspring survive till maturity and they themselves produce their own offspring. This has been the driver of life. This has been the principle of Darwin. Natural and sexual selection is the spreading of the genes. And imagine you are, so back to economics. What if you are a biologist and your job, you go with your clipboard in the forest and your job is to find how many colors are in the feather of a bird. You stay in the forest for a month, you come back and you say, I only see male, because only male, for their particular game, have colors in the feather. So my work has been, well, what if I go and look for the eggs? If I look for the eggs, I'm going to see the female behavior. So in my experiment, I try to modify the game so that it can at least account for the possibility that women do competition differently.
Mhm.
That game was really designed and tailored to to register competition the way it is in male. In my game, I try to see and allow for the expression of competition the way it could be expressed in female according to all this nascent theory in evolutionary psychology. And what do I find? Always replicate the initial finding with the traditional game, but you just change one feature of the game and you close the gap. So the intensity of competition is the same. It's not that we are behaviorally less competitive. We just do it differently because it wouldn't be optimal for us to compete exactly like men compete. And from that, the idea that in society, it would be ideal to have both strategies to cover all of the bases and to have groups that function even better. The importance of diversity and recognizing diversity. And this is very unappealing as a thought for many people because it means that nature has something to nature still weigh on our behavior, and especially the feminists of the first few generation, they really hate the idea of explanation based on nature because they thought nature is destiny. You're born a female, you're destined never to have your fair share of resources and power. But it's not like that. You're born a female, you may do things slightly different, or you can do things the same because also the variance of behavior within each sex is far greater than the difference between the two sexes. But even then, even if you don't think you want to do things differently, well, we are a society, why not? People should be allowed and valued for doing the things the way it comes natural to them. To me, it feels like we are cheating women when we say, oh, it is your fault that you're not represented at the top. You should behave like a man. And if you want to go at the top, you have to behave like a man. What I think is like, no, let's change the system, not the women. Let's have a system of incentive that it is more in line what would women care about. So we're going to have women naturally going for those positions of power because it's in line with their objectives. Change the system, not the women. It's okay if we accept that biology makes us a little bit different because there are more equality than differences, really, between the two sexes. We're mostly equal, but in a few behavioral things, we are different. And we are different, there is a reason why we are different. Because it's good for men to be like that. It's good for women to be different. When I say good, I mean evolutionary speaking.
Wow. I mean, this was probably one of the best pieces of conversation I've had so far on this podcast. Seriously.
Thank you.
Very thought-provoking. There's a lot of it that I don't agree with, and I'm going to
That's
ask you.
great.
Yes,
Yes.
and I'm going to ask you. I'm going to pull apart a lot of the notes. A lot of the things that you said. I'm going to start with one of the latest things that you mentioned. So you said variance within the sexes is much more than the difference between the two sexes. I agree with that, by the way. What that says to me is that then it's not fair that our system is based on the fact that men are like this and women are like that, right?
No,
because the system is making it difficult for women. Like, I'm one of those women who wants to be in the top 1%, right? I was kind of lucky, because I decided not to have children at a very early age. I decided, I was like, this is a decision I made. I'm not going to have children because this is what I want to do. But a lot of women, by the time they come to the point of making that decision or not, they've already had children, because society has put them in a position where they've kind of been pushed in a kind of a system where, it happens without them. Like, they are basically driven by their genes, by their, by the system, right?
yeah, it's no more nature or nurture, it's nature and nurture.
Exactly. It's the two together. Yeah, exactly. But if you remember, I said it's nature. I think it's nature, nurture, and the self, right? So nature, nurture, and the self. For me, the self part has been so strong that I was like, nature, society, I'm gonna make it my way. It's my way or the highway, I was like, if I, what I mean by that is that I was like, if I'm not gonna have the freedom to do what I want to do, I don't want to live. It's like, it's gonna be, that was the strength, because I was 17 years old and I was forced to marry my cousin. I lived in Iran, and and I was like, I told my parents, I was like, I'll commit suicide. I tried to, I didn't really want to commit suicide. I just really,
I know, but you really wanted to.
Yeah, I tried to throw myself into the river. I tried to throw myself out of the window, and
I'm glad it didn't. I'm glad you didn't succeed. Because your life is worth it.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, but I wasn't going to, but I would have. Like, if I didn't win, because I was like, I don't want to be married to this person, and I want to be free. Basically, it was like, he said that I will lock you up until your hair is as white as your teeth. But that's an extreme version of it. But it's like, despite the extreme pressure of society, I was like, no, my freedom is so important to me, and I want to be very successful, and this is just not going to happen, And I was like, I'm going to leave the country and I'm going to go abroad. I'm going to pay for my own education. I'm going to study. And I did all of that. That's why I'm saying, like, it's a combination of nature, nurture, and the self. And the role of the self is very important to me.
This is what in my experiment comes out, and in experiment of other people. When women are not showing certain behavior or level of competitiveness, whether it is in a laboratory game or it's in real life, it's because they know, consciously or unconsciously. For you, it's more conscious. For others, it's unconscious. They know it, that being successful in life comes with cost.
Yeah.
Being very successful professionally comes with 3 costs. You, instead of attracting one, kind of alienate potential good mate, because we have evidence, for example, among the winner of the Oscar for Best Actress and Best Actor. We are talking about people that are very, very successful. Yet one is going to get to the top by getting the Oscar. We have that the divorce rate among the women that get the Oscar after getting the Oscar is twice as much as with the men. Men
Absolutely.
win the Oscar, they don't get divorced. Women that are successful in their profession, they pay a price at the household level. Sometimes for exactly the reason that you said. So women don't go in after certain position. Is not be this is what I'm saying, and I think this is might bring together the two point of view. It's not that they are not competitive. They know that they could be competitive, but their way of expressing the competition is doing it differently so that they get their other goal in mind. There could be another you who is instead obsessed about having the best and possibly most successful children in the planet. And she could be as focused as you are, but on a different goal. This is what I'm saying. So women that go after successful position in society, they know that they pay at the household level with their family. They alienate other women. And it's very important for women to have women allies because we are physically smaller and there are, again, we can go into
I don't know if I agree with that, because look, like since I started this movement, so many women have been supporting. They've come in, they are like, you know, they like what I'm doing. They're like, Somi, they're championing it, right? I don't know. I just wonder whether, see, okay, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you think the fact that women are the childbearing sex, and, you know, as a result of that, for example, we have the period, you know, we have the, you know, the whole thing around childbirth, and then we have the menopause. So for me, when I look at nature, you know, like, let's just take period. I think the period, you know, menstruation is, and I'm going to ask you this, do you think it's a bug in nature or it's a feature? Is it a bug in evolution or a feature?
I have the answer. It's definitely a feature.
It's a bug. It's a bug. It's a bug. Look, it is a bug because it's causing women to go through this pain every month. But in their lifetime, they may have a few children. You know, so you're going through that pain every month, and it affects your, you know, your mental health. It affects your, you know, your physical health. You know, you lose a bit of energy. You know, you don't sleep as well. Your heart rate. You know, all of those. Surely, every time you release an egg, you know, there's more chances of various kinds of cancers. So I think to me it's obvious that it's a bug.
I love it. It's a bug for you, but you have to think about that nature didn't create us to be happy. The law of nature.
Then
is
I would say,
life.
I'm so sorry. Am I allowed to swear in your presence?
Yes,
Then
yes.
fuck nature.
That's what I'm saying. Nature is evil. Nature is not mother nature. Nature is a mother in the sense that create life around life to reproduce itself. But nature is more like a mother-in-law.
Yeah, I agree. You know, and I think, like, the problem with buying into this picture that, you know, women, the eggs thing, and the men having more, you know, it seems intuitively, it seems correct. But there is something about it that makes me feel it can't be. I feel like it's a bug that needs to be fixed.
Okay, so let's talk about two things. First of all, you have decided not to have children, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say there is someone else that is very different than you, and it is more, it's different. She has different interest. She's gonna have children. So which genes are gonna pass to the next generation? Your go-getter, conscious life, I'm gonna, you know, life is not gonna fuck with me? Or the other woman that has 12 children and accept to marry her cousin?
That's an interesting argument. There's something about that. So here's the thing. Look, if you look at my background, my sister, my brother, nobody is like me. Nobody. You know, there's there is a section. Have you read Black Swan, by Nassim Taleb, behavior economic?
I will definitely. Oh yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes, yes,
yeah,
yes.
Black
Those
Swan.
handsome event. Okay, you're the
Yeah.
black. I got it. Okay.
Yeah. So the Black Swan. So what he says that he was in a conference, and this Italian professor comes to him and says, Nassim, like, I love the book that you wrote, and I'm just kind of paraphrasing, but it's like basically the guy said, I was gonna write that book. The Italian guy says, I was gonna like I would be, but because of your background and your unique background, with coming from Lebanon, all of that stuff, you became the Black Swan because of your background, because of your story. And Nassim says, Taleb, and I completely agree with it. Taleb says, like, I completely disagree with that, because when I look at the people around me from my background, nobody looks like me. Nobody has done what I've done, So I disagree. Look, I think that if we go now to Africa, if you pick those children in Africa who have nothing to eat, who are dying, who the girls who don't have enough sanitary stuff to go to the toilet, all of those things. Like, if you go among those, if you give them an opportunity, I swear there are people among them that are going to be as smart as Einstein. They just haven't had, So I think, like I don't know, I just had an iron will somehow, but it has been painful. It has come at a price.
You have paid your yes. Well, you're still very young. You're still very young. You don't know what life has in store for you next. And I'm not arguing that there isn't a free will and consciousness, but I'd say that free will and consciousness sits on top of a biology. You talk about menstruation and the menstrual cycle. If you think that free will, well, maybe some women can, but when you have a surge of hormones, PMS, it's a real thing. There is no free will that can make. So our biology.
But we need to change it. But that's what this is about. Like, we need to create technologies that solve those. The truth is that this is a bug. And it's like, and we need to develop technologies to solve it. I just think that if we give more women the option of not going through all that pain, and give them the option of just getting a taste of success, getting a taste of, what it feels like. Look, I'm very competitive, but my competitiveness still comes with compassion. And for me,
that's some of my experiment,
right? And that's the impact
comes with cooperation for women.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing. So we need to encourage more women to become successful, to have the power. I think, most of the time, the reason why women look for a mate to help them, provide them with the things. If they had the option to do it themselves, they wouldn't need that, and that would change the game. It would change the game.
Somi, brilliant. That is really the key. Why it is like that? Because we are a cooperative. So, so we'll remind me to go to the cooperative breeding species, because this is who we are. And what you are bringing about is the core of everything. When you'll read the book by Sarah Hardy, which
I'm going to get that right away. Yeah.
You are going to also swallow the firework and understand so much. Even if she talks about primate and other creature, she also make the comparison with human, and why it is we are cooperative breeder. If we were like a mama bear that we can provide for our babies and for us, and the male just give the sperm, it wouldn't be a big deal. But the problem is that our nature through evolution has been that we cannot. Why? Because humans get out of the womb when they are still immature.
Yes.
What is the difference between a human versus a chimpanzee? That for us, it takes years and years and years to reach maturity. So they are dependent on us for a long period of time. And that's what makes us human. That's what creates our brain. So the fact that mama herself cannot provide in nowadays, yes, because the economies have changed. But for hundreds of thousands of years, it really took a village. This is the origin of pair bonding. Where does falling in love come about? Where does this idea of it may be brief, and for a few lucky one, it might last a lifetime, but for the most, it doesn't, this falling in love last a lifetime. But where does it come from? From the idea that we need the resources from both the woman and the man. The woman alone cannot do it. If the woman alone could do it, we would not be a cooperative breeding, it's called cooperative breeding species. Then the problem is solved. That's the problem. So the real problem that women have to face through evolution is not alienating allies, female allies, but especially keeping a provider around. Even if women, through their gathering, produced enough calories, we still needed the sum of the calories coming from the man, the protection from the man, given the difference in body size and everything. We needed to have both to create a successful offspring that reach maturity. Nowadays, what is astounding is that the economic conditions are so different that we could do it alone. And so many women go to the sperm bank and they choose to do it alone.
But I'm thinking beyond evolution, right? Because we are now at a position, or we can be, I think it's conceivable. This century, this is the century where we are merging with technology. So much is happening. I really love the idea of creating children outside of the body. I think we should just, as a species, we need to just stop and think what we are doing. We're being driven by our genes. It doesn't have to always be that way. We can change things. We can optimize things. We have the technology now to think differently.
Optimize over which domain? Because I think we could have the technology, right? But our brain, even if we are in 2020, is still the product of our evolution. If we do babies like that, it's because imagine now being on the baby side. You are born not from a mother and a father that touch you and caress you and loves you, because after giving birth, there is this enormous surge of hormones, oxytocin and things that the mother goes through. All of these things that we do in the natural way, they have a meaning and they have a reason. If we remove that, there are going to be other things that are maybe we create humans that don't need touch, that don't need a hug, that they don't enjoy each other. All of this touching and hugging and love, it's a byproduct of the way we produce children. The moment you cut that part, we are going to create creatures. Humans are not going to be the way they are now.
I will convince you that the human that doesn't need each other is going to be happier, because they don't need each other. They want to be with each other. That's different. See, evolution has subjected us, and maybe, look, I've had a terrible childhood. I haven't had any of the things that you just said. I had a terrible relationship with my parents. I remember, lying next to my mom, thinking, at that time, I was only 6 years old. I had heard the word God. Now I'm an atheist, but I was like, God, please, either I don't wake up or my mom doesn't wake up. That's how bad my childhood was. So maybe I was somebody who had to go through that pain, so that now I would reconsider, that maybe I'm here as a catalyst of, creating this conversation. Because I think what I don't like about nature and about biology is that it pushes us to behave in certain ways that we then retrospectively romanticize and say that that's a good thing. There are many, many things, about the way that nature is cruel to women. You think about the fact that by the time you're 50, you're getting your menopause. That immediately puts a shelf life. I see many, many men, when they go to dating apps, they put like a 60-year-old man has put their dating
40.
No, 30, 20, like honestly, I've seen like early 30s, and a 50-year-old man has put the dating, starting from like 20s. And there's been times where I've had this discussion with people, I'm like, they say like a 44-year-old man has started their thing from 20 something, right? Their age of desired woman. And I'm like, what do you have to say to that person? Like, what kind of conversation are you going to have to that with that person? And why are you not looking at people around your age? And they say, oh, but a woman, by the time they're in their 40, or 40s or 50s, they just don't look the same. They just they don't have the same, energy, all of that. So what it does, so that already, basically women live longer than men. So by default, it means that they are living longer. Potentially, they're more likely to be alone. They're less likely to enjoy sexual pleasure. They're less likely to have that sense of, being desired, all of those things, right? So that, to me, growing up, I always look, especially growing up in Iran, where a lot of men have got several wives, and I could see the behavior of men towards women, seeing all of those things and seeing how, like, my grandfather's attitude towards my grandmother, like the way that people called an older woman, they would call them a witch. To this day, like in the UK, I've seen people say those things about Theresa May.
I really hear you. But this part, I don't think is biology. The being so cruel with elderly women is not biology, but it is culture. Because among hunter-gatherer, the elderly are actually treated with a lot of respect. The grandmother is the one that takes care, not just of her children and all the other children. If you want to read, it's called the grandmother hypothesis in anthropology, is that if we are human with our brain, with our intelligence, with our capability, is thank you to the women that are not fertile anymore and they can produce more calories. Remember, cooperative breeding species, it takes a village where an incredible amount of power is thank you to the postmenopausal women. If we are who we are, it's thank you to the postmenopausal women. I read also, I don't know if it is whale, killer whales, I don't know which kind of large marine mammal. They go through menopause too. And they discover that creatures that go through menopause, what do they are? They are smarter. So it's culture that now is so negative towards elderly women. I think this is not nature. This is what we make of it.
I think it's not, look, let's just take sexual pleasure. The fact that that's something that's taken away from women, most of the time, like that by nature, they are put in a position that they feel that they're made to feel they're less wanted. The fact that, all the men wanting to date younger women, like not everybody wants to be a grandma.
Nature is extraordinarily cruel. But if we learn and we understand why of certain things, we kind of accept it because
I don't want to accept.
Well, that's the thing. I am a lot older than you and I fought so much. And at a point I said, you know what? Let's work together with nature instead of against nature. Let's see if nature, which is my enemy, I can turn it around and work more in line with nature. For example, change the system, not the women, is much, much easier because I work with nature, with what is, I accept that certain behavior have a biological root, but then I am a human. I create a society that reflects what I want, but not a society that is created by someone else, as if the society is unmovable and I have to change. I don't want to change. I want to be, why do I have to do all the work? So I take nature for what it is and I change the world. I change the society. We change the dating system. By the way, I have another great recommendation for a book for you, Ellen Fisher. Start with her TED Talk.
I think I've heard her.
Oh, she's the best. She
Yeah.
is really the best. She's the scientist, the first one that studied love and falling in love and all of these things. She's very optimist because she says nowadays with the dating app, it's also possible for older women to find a date because there are men that only would date
find
someone
a date, as if like it's like, you know, it's like it's also possible for them to find a date, as if like
It
it's like we're
wasn't
giving.
like that in the past because
I
one
know, but
is
that's
to be
not good
positive.
enough. That's not good enough. We need to change that mentality.
We are getting there. I think we are getting there. Where I listen to her, I'm very optimistic because she shows it with data, with her graphs, how better and better and better and better is getting every single year with respect to a past that it was a lot crueler, a lot more cruel to us. Back to one thing that I wanted to tell you about menstruation and PMS. And you said, is it a bug? Is it a feature? Another great book, Marty Hazelton, Hormonal. You're gonna love it. Read Hormonal. And the behavior that it is associated with the monthly hormonal cycle. And the kind of mate that we like is called the dual mating strategy. When we are at the peak of our fertility, what we like are the most handsome and dangerous guys that would pass on the genes for the best possible male. But who do we like besides the peak of fertility? Those that have good marker for providers. So, and she has lots of data to show. Some people think these results are not strong. It's still interesting to read how these hormone and biology and what could PMS mean? Well, what happens when we are in this bad mood and we suffer pain? It's a screening mechanism. Only the good guys would stick around through that. It's a way to cut the dry branches from a woman's life. Another idea, why women climax much later than men on average, of course, and why it takes more and is not like automatic. For most men, it's super easy. For women, it's not. It's another great screening mechanism. Who are the genes? Who are the good providers? The one that discover the magic abracadabra is the one that I want to stick around for longer. Every single feature of women reproductive biology, it has a meaning. It has a meaning that is so profound. And if you at least we understand it, we can come up with the technology that says, how can I short circuit the brain so that this need, that it is ancestral and primordial, is met, so that I can do without feeling miserable.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly. You know, I'm not saying we should get rid of everything. There are many things about, well, there are not many things I like about my PMS, but one of the things I like about it is that I do seem to have different cycles of creativity. You know, I come up with creative ideas and, you know, things that maybe I wouldn't have otherwise. And I value that. But the pain is not nice, and the you know, all the different things that goes with it is not nice. And the way I see it is like, yes, it's about, that's why I say about optimizing, right? And I want to be able to give people, I think that we need more women in decision-making places, right?
Absolutely.
But if we listen to biology the way that it wants to drive us, we are not going to get more women into.
Absolutely not.
The two are not you know, they're not compatible. And I think like
they are not compatible, but they are not incompatible. Nature just is. But the society is what we make. Having polygyny, polygamy or not, is what we allow and what we make, is not nature. There is nothing natural in polygamy versus non-polygamy. Is the culture.
So basically you are saying
versus non-polygamy.
So you are saying we should change the system, the society. That's what you're saying. And I agree with you.
Accepting biology, accepting the biological things, because going against nature never ends up well.
No. Well, okay. See, I agree with you that we should change the system, but I don't agree that we should accept biology the way it is. I think there are ways that we can make it better. That we
If we can, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
If it's possible, I'm all for it. Also,
Like let's
basically,
say if we could push menopause away by 30 years, so that menopause starts in 80s rather than 50s, that's a big win.
okay, I agree with you. Let me be the devil advocate.
Sorry to interrupt you. But push menopause by 30 years, but not with the period continuing with the pain. Because not another 30 years of period pain. Like if you could, there are a few things that I would totally, want to. One is push menopause by 30 years.
Okay.
The other thing is period to start only when you decide to have children. You know what I mean? Like around that time. Like say, for example, you say, next year I want to have children. Okay, from now on, I'm okay to have period for a few months, right? Not that all of your life. Why should you have to start having periods by the time you're 12, 13?
Okay, so let's a couple of thoughts. I love thinking this stuff. So first of all, period is a very modern and contemporary things. Our ancestral foremothers, they didn't have many periods in their life because they always had children. They were breastfeeding until the baby was 5 years old, and then they have another child. So period is a modern problem. Period is not an ancestral problem. I don't know among the current hunter-gatherers, but I would suspect women have a handful of period in a decade. So
yeah,
first of all,
if it comes at the price of having children, then that's not good, because then it means that you have to.
Good.
That's not good, because you don't want to have 5 children. Then you don't have any career. The whole point is to be able to have a career. See, like for example, in our third conference, we had the president of Royal Society of Medicine in Orthopedics, and he said the reason why there are not many women orthopedic surgeons is because surgery is an apprenticeship, and women go off and have children, and when they have children, they can't be apprenticing, and as a result they lose opportunities to build a career as surgeons.
This is one of the that is absolutely not good. But what if we train men to be provider? What if the woman that wants to be a surgeon has some helper around the house? Why cannot we ask more from men?
We can.
Why do you have to sacrifice? Let's say you don't want to have children, I totally understand. But let's say another woman at your age, in your position, wants to have children. Why does she have to choose between a career or a family? Men don't have to choose between a career or a family.
They don't. But you know what the reason why I'm saying we should optimize biology is because I think if more women have the choice, like say, if you had a choice to have the child inside your stomach or outside, and you were at a position where you're about to get, some really high, point in your career, and you say, you know what, like I'm like this close to getting this thing, like maybe becoming a physicist who might win a Nobel Prize, right? And at that point, if you have the choice, you might choose to have that child outside. Sometimes women have children and then later on they become resentful because they feel that they lost opportunities, especially when they get older and the children leave the house, right? They become, they're in their 50s and 60s, and then the child goes away and goes to college and then, doesn't even make a phone call at home, and then the woman is like, okay, I gave you all my life, and I'm like, I did all of this, and now I'm sitting here alone. And my husband has gone and married some younger woman.
At 20 years old, I know. It is terrible. It is terrible. And if technology can help us improve, great. I think we have lots of stuff to do at the level of society so that these things won't happen, so that it's not the women that pay the price no matter what. We pay the price if we take one choice. We pay the price if we make another choice.
That's right.
While what I find unfair is men are not faced by this dilemma. Men can have it all.
That's right. That's right. I agree with you that the society has to change. But my observation is that the society is not going to change anytime soon. So I have more hope in using technology to change things, because I think like for thousands of years, the society hasn't changed. It's been, patriarchal. Let's say I fall in love with somebody and we are together. And then when I'm 50, my partner dies. Right? And then I have to start from scratch and I have to, eventually find another partner. It's going to be so much harder as a woman, right? I want technology to keep women younger for longer, and give them the option if they don't want to have to go through pregnancy. I still think that it's better to have a choice than not have a choice.
Yes. Yes, it's better to have a choice, but I don't trust that humans, maybe that's what there is. I don't trust that humans know what's good for them. I don't think we know necessarily what's good for us. I see the news nowadays with people believing in conspiracy theory, believing in the worst things, not believing in fact and rationality. So you are a person out of the enlightenment, and I pretty much agree with you on everything. And I believe in rationality and consciousness, and this would be best. But then I see what humans are, and I'm scared.
Yeah,
I don't
think
have such a high opinion.
We need more women like you. We need, like, you're doing an amazing work, and that's why you were the first person on our panel. But some people like me have to go the extra mile.
Yes, absolutely. We are gonna do it hand in hand,
Exactly.
You do it your way.
But that's why, because we are not competitive like that. I'm not like, look, I never compete with anybody. I only compete with myself.
That's a classic. For a person that study competition, this is how women see competition. They say, I compete with myself.
Yeah, but no, well, I do compete, like, in the sense that, like, I want to see women in the top tier, and I want to be in the top tier myself of, like, I want to create a very big technology firm. I want to do all of these things, right? So in that sense, I am competitive. I'm 100%. I'm like, Zuck, I'm coming for you, like, I'm like, no, seriously, that I'm competitive. Like, no, what I meant was that I would not crush people to do, you know what I mean? Like
that's the way women compete.
Yeah,
that's the
it's
way
a
women
compassionate way, right? It's a compassionate
and that's
way.
why we need these women in power, because the way women do competition is not by creating vertical hierarchical structure, is by being more
inclusive
and being inclusive.
Yeah.
So yes, absolutely, and that's why I think the society would be better if we had more women in power, because women feel competition like you do feel competition. This is a common trait, a commonality among us, and the difference with respect to the male competition. And they enjoy, even when they are babies, they enjoy deciding who is the alpha, who is the beta, who is the gamma. There is nothing as exciting as competition for competition's sake. For women is to achieve something, to do something.
Yeah, exactly. For me, it's about achievement. It's not about power, it's about achievement.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like that sense of aced it.
Exactly. I did it.
Yeah.
Not because that means that I have all of my minions under me and I am the tippy top of the pyramids.
No, that's not attractive to me.
It's not attractive to women because it alienates men, it alienates female allies, it alienates all sorts of things. I think our way to do competition is better for society.
Yeah. It's been great talking to you, Alessandra.
It is so great talking to you, Somi.
It was a great conversation. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Professor Alessandra Cassar. We covered a lot of ground today, and now it's time to remember another woman who made important contributions in her lifetime. Grace Hopper was an admiral in the US Navy. She earned her PhD in mathematics in the 1930s and helped develop a compiler that was a precursor to the widely used COBOL language. She was a rare breed in her lifetime. Here's to a day that women like Grace Hopper will no longer be considered rare. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube, and connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Instagram.